Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk a little bit about research in the library and annotated bibliographies. This is just a quick, hopefully about 45-minute video that's going to talk to you about different ways the library can support you as you create an annotated bibliography. So for today's agenda, we're going to talk a bit about annotated bibliographies, what they are, and what it means to make one. Then we're going to talk a little bit about finding sources, so how to use the library databases to help find the resources you're going to use in the annotated bibliography. Then we're going to talk a little bit about APA and how to create those references. That way you have a complete citation for your annotated bibliography. And last but not least, we're going to talk about beyond Pacific Oaks. So after you leave Pacific Oaks, what are some ways that you will be able to get access to these different resources that you find? So an annotated bibliography, what is it? Well, it's a bibliography but annotated. And that means that it's going to have two components. It is going to have a complete APA citation and a short description or analysis of the resource. And kind of the length of the description and the nature of the description or analysis really depends on your professor and why you're creating this annotated bibliography. I want to emphasize that an annotated bibliography is not just a list of the first 15 search results you find that are somewhat relevant to your topic. This is a curated list. This is being created for a reason. And so you want to be very selective and think about why you're adding these things to your annotated bibliography. And that takes us to our last point. Why an annotated bibliography? Annotated bibliographies can be used for a lot of different things. For this specific assignment, it's talking more about sources that you can find now that you can use in your future career. And this is a great use for an annotated bibliography. Other reasons you could create an annotated bibliography is so you can share resources with other colleagues and scholars about a certain area of study. If you're writing a long research paper, a step in that process can sometimes be to write an annotated bibliography about the sources you're going to use. Now here is a quick example of an annotated bibliography. You'll see at the top we have the complete citation for the journal article. In this one, you'll note that we have a complete citation and a URL. And that URL is a live hyperlink. I know for this specific assignment, part of your grade comes from the URL you provide working and being a live hyperlink. And those are two things that we're going to talk about a little later. And then you'll see under the citation, there's just a quick couple of sentences describing the article and what I like about it and why I think it is useful. And so this is just one example of a resource, its citation and its description. So what are the steps to creating an annotated bibliography? The first step is to find and carefully choose those sources. Then you're going to create a complete APA citation for each source, and then you're going to write a few sentences or short paragraphs describing or analyzing the source. Today, we're mostly going to focus on those first two steps, right? We're going to talk about finding those sources and then about creating that APA citation. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Finding your sources. I want to start with a quick little exercise. And this exercise is just going to be looking at this video and describing what you see. If you want to, you can pause the video now and take a minute or so just to describe some of the things you see. Some of the words you may have come up with are outdoor market, fruit stand, apples, woman, vendors. These are all different words that you can use to describe what's happening in this picture. And they vary, right? Some of them are very specific. Apple, that's very specific. And some of them are very broad. Outdoor market. And some of them fall sort of in the middle. Fruit stand or fruit vendor. So these are keywords that we have come up with about this picture, about this topic. And so whenever you start researching a certain topic, you want to do the same thing. You want to brainstorm and think about all the different ways you can look at and describe your topic, the specific ways and the broad ways. That way, whenever you go in and start searching, you have a good list of keywords that you can use. One thing you want to think about whenever you're developing keywords are words such as apple. Apple can be used to describe a lovely fruit like we see here in the picture, and apple can also be used to describe an iPhone or a technology company. So when you're thinking about those words, you really want to think about the different meanings that they can take on depending on the context, because that can change drastically the results we get back. Just a few weeks ago, I was doing research with a student, and we were looking up education administration, specifically women in education administration. And so administration was one of our keywords. Something that we kept on getting back were medical journals, and for a few minutes we couldn't figure out why, and then we realized administration, you also administer drugs or administer shots. And so you want to examine your words carefully and see when words can have double meanings. Now, if you've created a list of keywords and they're not working for you, there's a couple of things that you can do. The first thing is look at synonyms to broaden or narrow or adapt your terms. For example, cat and feline both mean the same thing. However, one of them may be more general, more broad, used by a more general audience, while one is more specific. Feline is usually used by more of a scientific audience. So think about these words that mean the same thing again, but how it can change the meaning of your search. Vocabulary, sometimes you just need to adapt your vocabulary a little bit. To do this, you can do an open web search to find reference resources, or you can read over material that you've had in class to gain a better understanding of your topic's vocabulary. You can also revisit your topic. Sometimes it helps to reframe your research question or look at your topic from a slightly different angle. And that can help you think about other words that you could use to describe your research question. Now that we've talked about developing a good list of keywords, let's talk a little bit about where the best place to search is. To do so, I like to start off with a conversation about where students usually start their information journey. And most of them say Google, which is very understandable because in our everyday lives we often turn to Google to bring us information. However, we need to look at academic assignments a little differently, because for academic assignments, we're joining the scholarly conversation. And to do that, we need to be pulling from scholarly sources. And one of the best places to get scholarly sources are databases subscribed to by the library. Most of the information in these databases are going to be scholarly content, which means they're written by an expert, or peer-reviewed content, which means it's written by an expert and reviewed by more experts. This is often seen as sort of the gold standard for academic information. And that's why these databases are so useful when you're writing academic papers, right? Because these are scholarly sources created by scholars. And so this is the kind of information we want to be interacting with. And of course, the best thing about them is they are paid for by the library, which means you don't have to pay for anything within these about 200 databases that we subscribe to. Whenever you're accessing databases through the library's website, you have two choices. You can either use the summon box, which is going to search the majority of our databases all at once, or you can go into the research gateway, which will allow you to look into individual databases. In just a few minutes, we're going to go out to the library homepage and go through some examples together. And here is a list of helpful databases that could help you with this assignment. ERIC and ERIC, both by ProQuest and by EBSCO, are two educational resource databases. Education Source is also a database that focuses on educational resources. Sage Online Journal Collections is going to be a much broader journal collection, and that is going to be cross-discipline, be multidiscipline. So education, humanities, and social sciences, but they're all going to be journals, and it's a very big collection. As well as ProQuest eBooks Central. Those are that database is going to have a lot of ebooks that are going to be relevant to this assignment. So tools and commands for efficient searching. We have now covered creating key terms. We've covered why searching in databases is so helpful. And now I'm going to talk to you some about the how and the mechanics of searching within databases. And we're going to do this by talking about Boolean searching and advanced searching. So Boolean searching is when you use specific commands to either narrow or broaden your search results. And these are some of the most common Boolean commands and the ones we're going to talk about today. And you basically use these different commands to string words together to make the most specific result list you can. So let's talk about what some of these do. And is used to narrow your search and is the default for most search interfaces. So when you combine your keywords with and, let's say our keywords are learning, play, and child. Whenever we do that, this little green part here shows the results we're going to get back. And those are only the results that have all three key terms in them. So and is used to narrow. Or, on the other hand, is used to broaden your search and is best used if it's used between words with similar meanings. So what this means is you have a key term, but your key term has a lot of synonyms that go with it. You can connect those different synonyms through or. That way you're not just looking for games, but you're looking for play as well. Not, on the other hand, is used to narrow your search and is useful to eliminate certain terms. So in this case, let's say we're looking at early childhood education, but our search results keep bringing us back sources that have the term infant. And we know that these are not relevant to our search. By saying not infant, we eliminate all results that have the term infant. Next, we're going to talk about truncation. Truncation is used to broaden your search and is used for words with multiple forms relevant to your search. So what this means is if you use the base word plus a little asterisk, then you're not going to only get back child, but you're going to get back other variants of that word. So in this case, we would also get back children, childhood, and childbearing, because they all have that base word child. Some interfaces are going to do this automatically to an extent. So for example, you could search for child even without the asterisk and still get back children. However, it probably wouldn't bring back words such as childhood or childbearing. So then you can put them all together and connect your keywords using these different tools to make phrases that are specific and relevant to your search. One aspect I didn't talk about are those quotation marks. Those quotation marks can be used around phrases so you get those words back together within a phrase. So for example, the way we have it formed now, we have child with the little asterisk and development. That doesn't necessarily mean we'll get back childhood development or that child and development are going to be next to each other within our results. However, with early childhood, since we have put them together within those quotation marks, it is going to look for those two words together. So let's try it out. We're going to do so by going to the library's homepage. Once we get here, we have those options that we talked about earlier. We could either search through the summon box or we can go into an individual database. For our first example, we're going to use the summon box. And we're going to start by hitting more search options. By selecting more search options, it's going to open up the advanced search function of Summon. You will notice we have a drop-down box here that has that and, or, and not options that we can use to connect our different key terms together. We also have these plus buttons on the side so we can add keywords, and then we can take them away if we decide we need fewer keywords. Additionally, we can do field-specific searching. Currently, the default is that it will look for the keywords within all fields. However, you can change the default to look for a specific author, a specific title, or a specific publication date. So let's do a quick search here. Let's say special education, which we're going to put in quotation marks to make it a little phrase. Visual impairment, again, a little phrase. And let's say we're interested in K-12 schools. But we know that we might get a lot of things about higher education. So let's say not higher education. So when we do this, we have our little keywords in here. We have dates, which we can limit to. We can also limit by content type and discipline. You can do this either on this page or on the results page. We're going to do it on the results page for this example. So once I hit my results, you can see we have 655 results. We did a pretty good job of being specific about what we wanted. But now we're going to refine it more. If you select full text online, then that's going to only show you results that you have full availability to from your computer. You can also choose to have it scholarly and peer-reviewed or just peer-reviewed. For this, let's say we want to make sure it's peer-reviewed. You can see that takes it down to 143 results. You can also limit by content type. Let's say we're looking for a journal article. And dates. Let's look for something in the last 3 years. And now we have 23 results. From here, we can scan through the results and see which one we think would fit our research assignment. We can look at preview to see a brief description as well as the access information for the journal articles. If this is one that interests us, we can simply hit full text online. It may direct you to a page like this where it wants you to sign in. If it does, simply use your Pacific Oaks credentials. And then from here you can download the PDF or you can read the full article on this page. So that's an example of using the summon box. However, as we talked about earlier, you can also go into a specific database for a more narrow search. To do so, simply click on Research Gateway. The landing page for Research Gateway will have this lovely box here, which is going to separate the different databases by discipline. So let's say we're looking for something in education. By clicking that, we will get a full list of all of the education databases. You can see some of those I mentioned earlier as helpful databases are listed within the education. You can also go to A to Z database listing to see a complete list of all the databases that we have. Another helpful tool is by going to eBooks. You can see our ebook databases, but we also have ebooks by topic. So if you wanted to, then you could go into Education and Diversity to see a full list of all the books we have within ProQuest on education and diversity. So now that we've talked about finding sources, let's talk a little bit about creating those APA citations, which is the other part of creating a bibliography, an annotated bibliography we were going to talk about today. A brief overview of APA. APA stands for the American Psychological Association. And when we say APA, we're talking about their Manual of Style, which is the format used for different disciplines such as the hard sciences and the social sciences. And it's a set of rules for formatting papers, reference pages, tables, and figures. And the objective is to provide uniform structure and to create clarity so that scholars from different universities and across different cultures can all sort of format their things, their papers within the same way. Some formatting basics. You're going to use a font such as Times New Roman and 12 point. Everything is going to be double spaced. You will have 1-inch margins. APA suggests 2 spaces after in punctuation, but it doesn't require it. Whether you use the 2 spaces or a single space, make sure that you're being consistent throughout your whole paper. And you're going to have those page numbers in the upper right-hand corner. So you found the perfect source. Now, how do you create a reference for that source? So let's say you've gone through all the research, you have created that curated list of the different resources you want to talk about within your annotated bibliography. How do you start making a reference? Well, the first thing you want to do is figure out what kind of source is this. That's a critical piece of information to sort of ascertain, because depending on if it's a book or a journal article or a streaming video, you're going to need to collect different information and you're going to need to format it in different ways. So here is a list of the different reference elements, and they're going to be different, as I said, depending on what kind of source you have. The first piece of information you want is that author or editor information. Pretty basic. You just want to determine the author of the source. Sometimes that's a person, sometimes it's multiple people, and sometimes it might be an organization. You want that publication date. That is not the publication, that is not the copyright date, that's not the date you accessed it, but you want the publication date. You want the title of the book or the journal or other resource that you're using. Non-routine information. Non-routine information applies to something that is unusual. So sometimes we may use a streaming video as a resource. In that case, the non-routine information is the format of the video you watched. So it may be video file if it's something you watched online. It may be DVD if it's something you got from the library or have in your home collection. Publication information. For a journal article, this is going to be information such as the issue of the journal, and for a book, this could be information on who published it and where it was printed. And then electronic source and locator information. This is especially important for this assignment, as we talked a little bit about earlier. You are required to have a working hyperlink within the document. So you definitely want to have that electronic source or locator information in there. So now that we've talked about the different sources we need, we're going to go into a couple of different databases and look at some different resources and work on finding those elements. So let's start by going into EBSCO. Whenever we go into EBSCO, this is what the detailed record page is going to look like. Now, that author information is fairly easy to find here. We have authors and their names are listed. The date we see under source, it gives the publication date of August 2017. Since this is a journal article, we know we only need that year of publication. The title is right there big at the top, which is perfect. Non-routine information. For a journal article, there is no non-routine information. And so that takes us to publication information. For a journal article, that's going to be the journal it came from, the volume number, the issue number, and the page numbers. And here we see that all under source, right? That's the title of the journal. V stands for volume 32. N stands for number. Sometimes they will use volume 32 number 3 or volume 32 issue 3. So here the term issue and the word number are they mean the same thing. Now let's talk about that locator information. For this, that can be either a URL or a DOI. What you don't want to do is take the URL from the search bar. That can be a temporary URL that was just created by the path that you specifically took to the document. So it may only last a couple hours or a couple days. So when your professor goes to click on that link, it's not going to take them anywhere and you're going to lose points. So whenever you go to get that URL, you want to either find a place on the detail page such as this that lists the URL, or you want to find a place that says permalink and then copy and paste the permalink. So that was an example in EBSCO. Now we're going to go and take a look at Sage. And as you'll see when it comes up, the interface is a little bit different. So you kind of have to learn the skill of finding the information even though it's not always in the exact place. Here we see we have the authors at the top. Whoops. It doesn't necessarily denote them as the authors, but since we know that these are the people listed at the top, that's where the authors' names belong. It has that title information up there in that bold. We have the year. Now, you'll notice here it says first published November 8th, 2017. But when we select article information, we see article first published online November 8th, 2017, issue published February 1st, 2019. And so we have two different dates here, and we need to determine which is the appropriate date. Since this is a journal article, we know we're going to be providing them with the volume number and the issue number. And since we're doing that, we want to make sure that the information matches, right? We want to make sure that when they're looking for the volume number and issue number, they're going to find out when that issue was published, as opposed to when it was just published alone the first time, which means you want to go with that issue published date. We have that publication date, as we said, 42/1. It's over here, as well as listed over here. For the URL, again, you'll see it right here at the top. We're not looking at this up here. We're taking it from the bottom. You'll also usually find this information when you download the document. Here, for example, you'll see it has all that publication information up here at the top. Volume number, issue number, page number, and that publication date. So if you hit Cite here, you'll see it produces the APA citation for you. A couple of things you want to be careful about. First, you want to make sure it's the correct style. You don't want it in MLA because you see it looks completely different. You want APA. You also want to be able to make sure that you can check that the citation is correct. Oftentimes the citation managers can give you the information, but it's not always formatted completely within the guidelines of APA. So anytime you use one of these citation makers, make sure that you're double checking its work. And last but not least, we're going to take a quick look at ProQuest. This is going to be a book, and much like the others, we will have the book details over on the certain side that will give you all of that information, from the editors to the title to the publication date. And then right over here we have that share link to book to get that permanent URL, and we have a cite book function. It defaulted to MLA, so we change it to APA to get a citation for the book. I will note on this one, it doesn't give a link directly to the book, which you need to for this assignment. It gives a link to the database's homepage. And once you collect all those different elements, you will format them appropriately. A few things to note: between each element, you will have a period. For books, the titles are going to be in italics with only the first letter of the first word capitalized. For journal articles, the title of the journal is going to be in italics, as well as that volume number. And this is an example of a streaming video that has some of that non-routine information. One thing to note here is you will want yours to have this active link, the hyperlink, which is denoted by the underline and the blue. To do that, you want to do a couple of things. First off, as we talked about earlier, you're going to make sure that you're getting those links from the permalink and the URLs provided by the detail page. You're not going to copy and paste from your search box. Another thing you want to do is, once you get the link into your document, it will hopefully automatically go to a URL, to an active hyperlink. That way your professor can just click on it and it will take them directly to the source. However, sometimes Word or another word processor you may use may have issues recognizing it. If that's the case, you want to highlight what the link is, go to Insert, and then Hyperlink. It may look a little different depending on what version of Word you're using. Um, However, those are the general steps to make them hyperlinks, and that should turn them blue with a little underline. And then of course you want to click on them to make sure they are working properly. And beyond Pacific Oaks, or how do I find these articles after I leave? So, as we talked about a little earlier, a key portion, the key reason for this assignment is so whenever you are professionals, you will have this collection of resources to go and look back on. However, sadly, after you graduate from Pacific Oaks, you will no longer have access to these databases. And so a lot of them may be behind a paywall that you can no longer get behind. So there are two different kinds of libraries that I highly suggest you looking for. The first one is a public library. The good thing about making these complete citations is you should be able to go to any public library and say, I would like access to this article. And they should be able to either point you towards a database that they subscribe to or interlibrary loan the article for you. Depending on the library, the time frame may vary on that. You may have to provide a small fee, but the public library should be able to help you find these articles since you have that complete citation. Another type of library that you can consider visiting are academic libraries of public universities. Since public universities use public funds, they are generally open to the public. You may not always be able to check out books from these different libraries, depending on their circulation policies, but oftentimes you can use their databases simply by going onto campus and searching from campus. So those are just two different ways that you can possibly get access to these different articles after you leave. But they all depend on you having that complete citation. Here are some resources I wanted to share with you that can help you with annotated bibliographies. Of course, our library website has some resources that can be beneficial. Both the University of Toronto and Columbia College have great pages that have some examples of annotated bibliographies. One of them has a video, one of them has a template you can use. And of course, OWL at Purdue is a great APA resource for all of APA. It's a really great resource. And more APA resources, citation makers like we were looking at within the databases. Again, the library website, we have a guide specifically about APA. The Learning Center is a great support system that can help you. And last but not least, your friendly neighborhood librarian. We are more than happy to meet with you, to work with you, both about finding sources and about citing and formatting in APA. Thank you all so much for your time today. I hope this presentation was helpful. Please feel free to reach out to the library by either email or phone if you have any further concerns or questions about researching APA and how we can help you with this annotated bibliography. Thank you.